Good afternoon. We're so glad to have you here at the third annual State of the City Address. I'm Tammy Hamlin. I'm the city manager. And now I'd like to invite all of you to stand. And as the Air Force JROTC Color Guard presents the colors and leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. They're from the Tucker High School. Thank you.
Forward, heart. Color guard. Halt. Right, hey. Can't read colors. Present colors.
Good afternoon, all. If you would please join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can't read colors. Order colors. Left pace. Forward heart.
Tucker. I've always thought it a great place to live, to work, to play, and pray. While we're a city built on the hard work of our people, our backbone, that which keeps us humming along, is economic development. Tucker straddles I-285, Highway 78, and is a stone's throw from I-85, a location that can't be beat.
We had already kind of surveyed our customer base for the past couple of years when we thought about moving, and most of them are coming from the Stone Mountain, Tucker, Lawrenceville, from where we work.
You can get wherever you want to go quickly, being in Tucker, so it's a great nucleus and a great place to be and go just about wherever you need to go.
Tucker is a buzzword in real estate right now. It's small town USA, but right on the edge of big town USA.
Wonderful. Best thing that ever happened to us.
The North Lake area is a true hub of retail and dining, with North Lake Festival, Briarcliff Village, and our newest power center, Tucker Meridian.
We love the Tucker area. This area is booming, and the shopping center is brand new and booming, and couldn't be more excited to be here.
Our industrial areas are a diverse mix of breweries, family-owned manufacturers, and major multinational corporations.
Georgia, and in particular the region around Atlanta, is for sure one of the most interesting economic areas, with a lot of highly skilled workers and engineers, and this is why we decided to go to Tucker.
And well, we're kind of known for our Main Street. For those looking to expand or relocate their business, there's no more personalized service.
We went to Tucker, told them what our plan was. They sent us through the process, laid everything out, and helped us get this thing built quickly and efficiently. It was a pleasure.
I invest personally in areas that are on the way up, and Tucker is a rising sun.
The more we spent time in this community, the more it felt like a community, and I knew that Tucker was where I wanted to open a business.
Tucker's home, not just to me. Tucker feels like home to people that don't live here.
I'm Frank Auman, the mayor of Tucker, and I invite you to discover Tucker, where there's always something going on.
Thank you and welcome to Tucker. You do me a great honor by being here with nothing but to hear me talk for a little while, so I'm going to try to make it worth your while. Thanks, Colonel Robinson. I guess they may have left the room, but we're real proud of our high school, Tucker High School, and the honor guard from the junior ROTC has been available to us any number of times for events like this, so we appreciate them as well. I have some introductions I want to make, if you'll bear with me. We have some elected officials with us. Mayor of Dunwoody is here, doing me a good turn. I attended their State of the City a few weeks ago. I want to introduce our council, especially our city council. They're all sitting up here in the front row. Oh, did I miss Sally Harrell? I thought she was coming. Oh, I'm looking right past you. Pardon me. Senator Sally Harrell, State Senator. I had you on my list and I didn't see you come in, so thanks for being here. So our city council is here. Michelle Pincava and Ann Lerner are here on the front row. District 3 representation, Bill Rosenfeld, Pat Soltis are here from District 1. And Matt Robbins and Noel Monfordini from District 2. We're going to talk about all of them in a little bit as the afternoon wears on, but I wanted you to meet them in person. You are citizens of Tucker are blessed to have a truly devoted city council, and one that works well to get along with each other, even when we disagree on issues, and it's been a great benefit to you as citizens, so we're going to talk about that some as we go along. There are a lot of other people here today who help the city go. We have a number of boards and commissions. We have our planning commission. I'm going to tell you who they are. Frank Sapp is here with us. I don't know where anybody's sitting. Frank's right back there, but also Jessica Vargas, Michael Thomas, Catherine Atterbury, and Steve Smith serve on that important body. We have a community council, which is a little bit unusual among cities, but we adopted it from DeKalb County's process. They help us with our land use cases and kind of helping iron them out as we go along. So I saw Kara Schroeder is here in the back, Suzanne Borker, Linda Clark, all here, and also Frank Luton, Jonathan Waters, Seth Burrow, and Will Arroyo, and Tommy Lupo serve on that body. We have a zoning board of appeals, Chuck Abbott, Keith Easterling, Joe Singleton, Susan Setterstrom, and Neil Stubblefield. We have a construction board of appeals, Joe Becker, Jason Burton, I saw last night at an event, and Charles Logan. Most recently, we established a DDA, a Downtown Development Authority for the city of Tucker, just within the last 15 months or so. I know some of them are here. Creighton Langford, I saw, there he is. Honey Vandekreek is here, right there, and Joe Kilpatrick, where'd he go? Back there in the corner, along with Bruce Penn, Wesley Knapp, Damian Claire Presley, and Andy Alexander. So there are a lot of people involved with what amounts to volunteer work, but it's real work, it's real business, and we appreciate all their effort. Steve, come on in. Well, we're going to stop and watch you walk up. Steve Bradshaw is our one of our county commissioners who represents a part of Tucker. Thank you for coming to join us. So many roles. Bill Kadick is here. He's our designee from the city to the Tucker Summit CID. Executive Director of the Tucker Summit CID, Emery Morseberger, is here. And we have, I saw Barry Shrink. Where'd he go? Barry is our designee from the city to the other CID, the Tucker North Lake CID, which is headed by Matthew Lee, sitting right next to him. We're also honored to have Judge Steve Nicholas with us. Judge Nicholas is our judge. He's the guy who, from the beginning, has held court for us. They meet currently over in Clarkston, who kindly lets us borrow their facilities, but he was our one and only until we appointed a few new ones to give him some relief just in the last few months. Ted Reinhardt is the Deputy COO, Chief Operating Officer of the County of DeKalb, but also a resident of Tucker. I bet I missed somebody, but I'm going to stop. I'm looking for my handler. Good. I have to also introduce my family who's here with me. My wife Gay, right here in the front row. I know if you had a choice you'd rather hear from, but I'm the mayor, so I got to do this. My daughter Grace is here. And Gay's parents, Bob and Betty Ann Bell, who lived in Tucker for 45 years or whatever. If you're on Facebook, you've seen Betty Ann say, "I love Tucker," and she does. So, as you might imagine, I've been thinking for a while about what I would say today, what to report on about what we've done and our future. It's kind of hard to know where to start, so in a case like that, I always want to start by expressing gratitude. We live in an amazing city, and the longer I've been in this role, the more it's become clear two things. A, everybody says that, right, Denny? But B, it really is true in Tucker. We really are uniquely blessed. Not only do we have a population, a citizenry that's engaged way above the norm, but there's a real sense of putting others before self that is unlike anywhere I've seen, and it never ceases to amaze me. Last night we recognized some of our key volunteers from the people who you met here, but also from lots and lots of our community organizations, from parks to just all sorts of organizations that really were doing the work of the city before there was a city, and they've continued on, and it's a great environment to come into. But even those 50 or so who were there knew that they were being recognized not only for their own work, but kind of on behalf as representatives of people who work in their organizations, hundreds and hundreds of people who work for our benefit, and more importantly, who work at being good neighbors, who care for the people who live here, really in a way that the government never can. And so I'm especially grateful for our Tuckerites who make it such a great place to live. And I want to thank all of y'all for what you do and for being here. So I mentioned I've attended several other State of the City speeches recently. I went to Dunwoody's, I went to Dorville's, saw CEO Thurman do the State of the County every year since we've been a city. Partly as a matter of interest, partly doing a little recon to kind of see what other people do and how they go about it. We would love to have, some of us would like to have the Ravinia Hotel as our venue for an event like this, which is where Dunwoody held their event. Dorville's was on the grounds at the Assembly Yards, which is an amazing, world-class, nationally recognized development that's underway. We're a little more homespun here, but we love our Main Street, and we love our neighborhoods, and we love our neighbors. So they have their thing, we have our thing, and that's really part of the beauty about the cityhood movement, because we all get to chart our own course, as it were, and determine our own future to a very large degree. We get to innovate in problem solving. Sometimes we borrow good ideas and innovations from our neighbors, and sometimes we innovate and produce solutions for things that others will borrow from us, and I'm going to speak a little bit more about that later. So you're here to hear about the state of the city. If you know me, I'm kind of a literal, linear sort of a thinker, and so I think a state of the city ought to be an accounting to you of what we've been doing and why, and whether we're on course, and how everything's going. Whether we have a consensus of the goals that we're after, whether we're making progress toward them. And before we can evaluate how we're doing, we have to understand our goals in order to understand our condition relative to them, and we have to understand our roles within all of that. So, let's start with me, shall we? At the risk of surprising or disappointing some of you, and to the great relief of others, I don't run this city. I don't even attempt to run this city in the way that you'd usually use the word. What I try to do is to lead the city, and that's a very different thing. So when I talk about running the city, what I mean is operating it day to day, executing on the plans and policies that we've made as a council. That's all carried out by some very professional, highly educated, dedicated, trained people that we call our staff. Doesn't capture quite what they do, but I want to introduce some of our department heads and leadership to you. If you don't mind, I want you to stand so that folks will know who you are. I want our people to know who you are. So Cindy Jenkins over here is our... I'm going to ask you to hold your applause because we love them and we would spend the afternoon applauding for them. John McHenry is our Community and Economic Development Director. Also with them, and I'm not sure all of who's here, Courtney Smith is our Planning Director, works with John. There she is back there. Billy Phillips is our business outreach coordinator, works within economic development. Matt Holmes is our communications director, standing here behind the camera, and his erstwhile chief assistant, Sonia Shupsky, is over there by the door, working away. Rip Robertson is our Parks and Recreation Director, doing a great job. He has Jason Collins as operations manager. Yeah, stand up, Rip. You got. I'm going to go fast. You don't have to stand too long. How about Ray Rollins? Is Ray here? Did I see him somewhere?
He's answering the phone.
He's keeping the doors open. And they have a great team. We're gonna get to some of them too. Maricela Perdomo is our chief code enforcement officer back there. Josh Roth is our chief building official. Is Josh here this afternoon? Cynthia Strozier, I saw come in, our finance manager, right back there. Thank you. Ken Hildebrandt, city engineer, but now more famous as the voice of Cooper the dog, which we might get around to explaining. We have Bonnie Warren as our city clerk, who really, it's another title that doesn't begin to capture all that goes into that. We have three others that fit in a bit of a different category. We funded in the budget that we just passed for the fiscal year that's just about to start, position to hire our first chief financial officer for the city. And we're excited about that. This will be somebody that will really add to our development as we go forward. Brian Anderson's our city attorney. I think he's away at a daughter's regatta. She rows, yes. But finally, we have our newest, our first, our only employee. You met her a minute ago. Tammy Hamlin is our city manager, and she actually does run the city. So. Don't sit down quite yet. I want all of our staff, because I didn't introduce everybody. If you're staff for the city, I want you to stand up because I want to tell you guys a little secret about them. They do some great work, and we really appreciate them. They have important responsibilities. Today at 4 o'clock, their responsibility was to show up and stand by in case the room wasn't full. They would come and fill some seats. So thank you for that and all that you do. If you want to begin your weekend, I will not be offended. Carry on right out of here. So thank y'all, please. Okay, so back to me. When I say it's my job to lead the city, it covers a lot of ground. I lead the staff's work. I work closely with the staff leadership. I lead the council to the extent that that's doable. Thank you all. And I'm to lead our citizens to understand what it is we're doing and why. Well, the question becomes to lead them where, right? Where does that come from? Where does that get decided? And that answer comes from several places. So we have a core mission. If you've been around Tucker since we've been a city, you've heard this. We have 3 services that we are obligated to offer under our charter. That was the core promise of cityhood. Parks and recreation, code enforcement, zoning and planning. But there are a lot more areas of responsibility than just that. We issue business licenses, for example, and we collect the related fees. Because of SPLOST, we program about $5 million a year in road and sidewalk and parks improvements. And though we don't provide all the other services, that's Ted Reinhardt's job, we work closely with the county, with our counterparts at the county on things like water and sewer and stormwater, police and fire and EMS, all those other services. We work closely with them, monitoring and making sure that our citizens are being well served and getting the full value for their tax dollars. So that's part of our mission, part of our priorities. Then our charter says this. Let me take a deep breath because there's a lot here. Listen to this. Our charter says, in addition to all the other powers conferred upon it by the law, the City Council shall have the authority to adopt and provide for the execution of such ordinances, resolutions, rules, and regulations, not inconsistent with this charter and the Constitution and the laws of the state of Georgia, which it shall deem necessary, expedient, or helpful for the peace, good order, protection of life and property, health, welfare, sanitation, comfort, convenience, prosperity, or well-being of the inhabitants of the city of Tucker, and may enforce such ordinances by imposing penalties for violation thereof. Wow. That's a lot of latitude to decide what we're going to do as a city. So one of the first things we did was to develop a comprehensive plan. You've heard this. We call it Tucker Tomorrow. It's a document that encapsulates our desires for the city at a very high level and narrows down those broad powers that I just sort of enumerated for you to something manageable and directed. To create it, we had lots of conversations with the citizens of Tucker, tried to boil it down to some goals we could build consensus around. And there's a lot in that document, of course. It's evolved already, it'll continue to evolve. But it came down to these 5 primary goals. Here's my teleprompter right here. So these were the 5 at bottom, when it all filtered down through, and for all that's in there, these are the 5 goals that our citizens built consensus around for us to pursue. So once we resolved those goals as a starting place, I sort of wrapped my own phrase around it. You've seen it and heard it a couple times already today. I want Tucker to be a place where a person can live, work, play, and pray their whole life. We want to be that kind of community. I'm going to pause long enough and recognize one of our real heroes and helpers in the cityhood movement. Billy, thank you for being here, our state representative. We're going to find him a seat. Billy Mitchell.
One over here.
Oh. Have my seat. Come on over here. Come over here, have my seat. All right, he's good. He's good. So, this phrase is just my own way. It's a kind of a shorthand for me to, it's kind of a checkpoint for me to ask myself, are we covering all the bases? Are we doing the things that we're supposed to be doing to create, to nurture a community of this type, where a person can do all these things in their hometown, nearby? They don't have to travel 45-minute commutes for any of them. We want all those things to be possible right here in Tucker. So it's a way to say, are we in fact making progress toward those goals? Am I and the council leading collectively where we decided to go? So, there we go, thank you. So as I share with you our accomplishments and our goals, I hope you'll find your confidence in me and in our council to be well placed. We are working with a determined focus toward those goals, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. So, one more bit of shorthand. Here's a quick way to think of our history, our short history as a city government. If our first year was kind of getting organized, startup kinds of activities, that sort of thing, our second year was taking up those basic responsibilities. We began to do the things that we're supposed to do, building the infrastructure of a city operation, achieving some early successes, kind of attacking the low-hanging fruit. You can think of that as sort of learning how to execute on our priorities. Our third year has been largely planning for our future, which you can think of as what to execute on. What are we going to take on next now that we've sort of got our feet under us? And taking on the bigger task. It's never been quite that delineated, but that's a helpful way, at least for me, to think about it, because we've been doing a lot of things at once, but that's sort of at the core of what we're doing. So a year ago at this time, we had just completed our 2-year transition period. When we became a city, we had 2 years to sort of get all that together, adopt the services and begin providing the things we promised to provide, make arrangements for all the others, primarily with the county, to continue providing certain services. It was just a year ago we assumed responsibility for all the parks. Really, just a year ago now. The rec center was slightly before that, but it's only been a year. And signed intergovernmental agreements to up. Michelle Henson has arrived, another one of our Representative Michelle Henson was, in a lot of ways, the first time our city life was saved. It was saved way before we were ever a city by Representative Henson. Thanks for being here. So our first big focus for year 3, which we're kind of just ending, was to launch a range of studies aimed at identifying our specific needs as a city, the top priorities of our citizens, and undertaking the work of planning how to address them. So we simultaneously began, in retrospect, maybe more than we bit off more than we could chew, but we're getting there. We simultaneously began studies that included, but were not limited to, a transportation master plan, a trails master plan, a parks master plan, a downtown master plan, a historic resource report, and a sign ordinance and overlay rewrite. So every one of those involved engaging a consultant or a group of consultants to lead a study and a big public input process for each one. And over the last couple of months, those studies have neared completion, and we've begun to adopt them, and we'll kind of complete that cycle over the next couple of months. they amount to refinements and additions to a fleshing out of the comprehensive plan that we started with. And in that, they're going to help provide a really solid guide to our future. The things that we've agreed on, we've built consensus around that we want to do and see done. It's also going to help us count the costs and the challenges of doing those things as part of the larger vision. So you can find details about all of those on our website, www.tuckerga.gov. You can see all the detail that you like, whether they're passed or in process. If you want to know about them, you can find it there. That focus on planning did not stop us from executing. In fact, we were busy in kind of a fire all the guns at once kind of way. In our 3 core areas, our Parks Department replaced every piece of playground equipment in every park where it existed and began planning for more in other parks. They renovated the pool at Cofer Park and saw more usage than it's seen in many years, and I'm told the highly anticipated splash pad is officially opening Memorial Day weekend. It's not raining yet, but in the meantime, we may turn Main Street into just one big splash pad if the weather comes with it as supposed to. They expanded and improved on our summer camps for hundreds of youth in the city in a very innovative partnership with the YMCA, and they're planning an adult field day a week from tomorrow. Not too late to get tickets?
Yes, sir.
Adult field day. Child care provided so you can have field day. Together with our communications department, they presented a tremendously successful Tucker Summer of Fun last summer that included our first ever movie on Maine and an overwhelmingly successful, I just can't tell you, an Independence Day celebration that attracted more than 5,000 people to Main Street that anyone who was there will not soon forget. We're proud of them. We recently funded other park improvements, including lights for the tennis courts at Henderson Park, an expansion of the nature preserve, thanks in large part to a couple of our commissioners, Nancy Juster and Greg Adams in particular, who helped with financing that. We just funded a major renovation to the gymnasium that's going to, at the rec center, that's going to allow increased access to activities like basketball, volleyball, and pickleball. If y'all don't know about pickleball, I laugh just because it's a funny thing to say. It's like the fastest growing participation sport in the country, and we're gonna lead the charge on that. They've added key staff to make sure our parks are well maintained and operated after a lot of years of what could only be called neglect. And this year they're adding 2 more operations assistants, but they'll function like a park patrol, where they'll be in the parks every day assisting visitors who are there, but also keeping a close eye out for needs for repairs and maintenance, cleanliness, those kinds of things. So we'll actually have some people in the parks taking care of things day by day. In the second of our core areas, we expanded our cadre of code enforcement officers to 3 and added administrative support for them to maximize their time in the field. We issued 226 citations in the last 12 months to address health, safety, and welfare issues, plus another 60 offenses like drunk and disorderly conduct since we adopted our ordinance. We wish we didn't have to issue any. But the improvement in the appearance of the city, its functionality, the health and welfare of our citizens has been dramatic. There's just no other way to say it. In the third core service, we heard a steady stream of land use proposals for every form of residential and business use. We approved zoning changes and developments for traditional single-family residential, small lot single-family, condominiums, apartments. Just this morning, 4 or 5 hours ago, we cut the ribbon at a new senior independent living facility on North Lake Parkway. That's the high-rise building that has grown up in the last few months up at La Vista Road and 285. And we'll soon see the opening of 245 modern urban-style apartments also on North Lake Parkway that's really going to define that area. After a long cycle, it's going to be brand new again, very current, very modern, very attractive, right next to Tucker Meridian, which was mentioned in the video. We approved changes in zoning for a new 180,000 square foot multiple tenant distribution facility. Big, not just a development, but a harbinger, a sign of things to come, a sign of what people see in Tucker, a brand new, on spec. They built it knowing that it would get leased, and it has. It's been very successful. We approved a change for a multi-storage warehouse over in the North Lake area as well. We approved a change to bring in the headquarters of Discount Furniture, who's going to serve all of Metro Atlanta from right here in Tucker, specifically because they said they can get anywhere they need to get in the city of Atlanta from that spot in 1 hour. And that's the kind of thing we want people to think about Tucker when they are looking for that kind of a location. We issue on average about 25 to 30 new business licenses every month in the city of Tucker, and there's more to come. But at the risk of sounding like an infomercial, that's not all. Based on an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement that we signed last May, in September, we implemented a completely new model for policing a city. When the borders of the Tucker precinct were redrawn so that the entire city of Tucker is now within a single precinct within the larger DeKalb County Police Department. It creates a clear line of command to a single precinct commander, lends itself to better crime fighting and crime prevention as they're better able to identify trends and MOs and trouble spots. And I want to thank, I know they're not all here, Jim Conroy, recently retired as Chief of Police of DeKalb County, was a great help to us. Major Greg Pedrick, who was the commander of the precinct, the Tucker precinct, got a promotion. Thank you. I was going to say he got elevated, but I didn't think. To become an assistant chief in DeKalb County. We have a new commander at the precinct, Major Craig Medlin, who we're thrilled to have on board. He's a 25-plus year veteran in special operations, not a guy to be trifled with, and not a guy you want to commit crime in Tucker while he's around. But I want to give a special nod to Lieutenant Shepner, who's standing over here by the door. He is always with us. Most of you know him, as I can tell from your applause. He's our direct link. He's our day-to-day liaison between the city of Tucker and the DeKalb County Police Department. We get a briefing from him every 2 weeks on every crime that happens in the city, and I mean every crime, so that we are aware if there are trends, if there are trouble spots, if there are things that we need to prioritize, and he has access to the other side to help us bring those resources to bear as we need them. So thank you, Lieutenant, and for all the DeKalb police who work hard and take risks day after day to make our lives safe and trouble-free. So this is probably a good moment while we're talking about the police to digress and say, when I was developing my remarks today, it occurred to me there's a certain element of people who operate among us that when I say live, work, play, pray, they hear this. Yeah. This is not what we want. I want to say this, as we've grown into our police powers, as a city we have police powers, and we've grown into those, developed our relationship with DeKalb County, we intend to use our police powers energetically. It's going to look more like this. I just want to tell you, I won't say to my fellow mayors that we're going to send our criminals to your city. We're going to send them somewhere. We're going to send them somewhere. My mother-in-law is here. She's there's a maybe apocryphal story that she sometimes was known to end parties at her house by blinking the lights and saying, "Look, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here." That's our message for the criminals around Tucker. We're turning out the lights on it. We don't care where you go, you're just not staying around here. We've made great progress. We've had great success reducing crime in a couple of places in and around Tucker that had become havens for criminals and all sorts of ne'er-do-wells. No. We just this week began an initiative to tackle our worst crime area, centered around Juliet Road, if you happen to know where that is, in which a quarter to a third of all the crime in Tucker takes place. And probably that much more emanates from there. People from there go out and commit crimes and return home. We intend to reclaim that area for the honest, hard-working people who live there, who've chosen to make Tucker their home, who don't deserve to live their lives daily in fear for their safety or in fear for their lives, actually. And here's the thing. I want to approach things as a positive. I like to be for things and not against things. When we turn that community around over there, it's going to be a safe haven not for drug dealers and criminals, but for families of all shapes and sizes. who also want to live and work and play and pray in this great city, and that's a top priority for me. I personally am not going to rest until we see that done, so that's something you can watch out for over the next year. Back to this year's accomplishments and progress toward our goals. Among its many accomplishments this year, the Communications Department expanded In Tucker, which I think you all had a copy of in your seat. It's our soon-to-be award-winning city magazine. They expanded it from 8 pages to 16. It's beautiful, it's thorough, it's informative, it's useful, and it now includes a section every month on our schools and what's happening there and how well they're doing and celebrating their successes through something we call a brag sheet. It includes a section called Business Boom that's for the benefit of our citizens, but also for the wider world to know about the economic development opportunities and attractions that there are in Tucker and why they should be thinking about living and working here. Our Communications Department also produced in-house a special short documentary for Black History Month back in February called 4 Streets to celebrate the history, both the history and the future of the Peters Park area, which is one of the real successes in the short history of our incorporation. I want to recognize Linda again. I can't thank you enough for taking charge. It's one of those areas that we have turned around in a big way. We've got ways to go, but that's the model for the kind of success we want in other parts of our city. Led by our Communications Department, but involving just about every other department in the city, we congratulated our first 21 graduates of the University of Government Affairs at Tucker. Other than those who actually work for the city, these are the folks who are most well-versed in how the city works, and they're sort of our ambassadors out in the community to help spread the word. Are any of y'all here today? Anybody here who is a graduate? I know, Matt, there's a couple back there. Thank Linda, naturally enough. Thank you. It's a real strength of our city to educate and train folks to know that there's, despite appearances sometimes, there's rationale behind the things that we do. There are reasons we have the crazy processes that we have, so thank y'all. Thanks to 74% approval by DeKalb County voters, SPLOST has provided significant funding for projects that would otherwise be impossible. It's that simple. In addition to the park improvements that I already mentioned, we've been able to fund a range of sidewalk additions and improvements, including filling in a lot of gaps where sidewalks just sort of dead end. Y'all have seen this, right? So we've got a project underway to connect those sidewalks and make them useful again. We'll be adding a new sidewalk along Idlewood Road from the middle school to Lawrenceville Highway. Big deal for safety and connectivity to our downtown area. And we're going to be adding a sidewalk on Henderson Road from La Vista to Henderson Park. How long has that been? 13, 14, 15 years. We've been talking about it. We're going to get it done this year. Yeah, okay. You heard that, Steve, right? This is an example. It's kind of a legacy project. I mean, it's been around since before cityhood. We're cooperating with the county on to get that done, and we're close up on it right now, and we're going to get there. So all of that had to do with SPLOST, but the bulk of our SPLOST money provided about $6 million for road resurfacing in the first year. And furthermore, thanks to great advice and guidance from our professional staff, we were sort of first out of the gate on paving, which means we got priority attention from the contractors, and we also got some really great pricing that meant when we got to the end of the year, we hadn't spent as much on the projects we identified, and we were able to reallocate that money and go further. We laid down, we laid down 31 tons of asphalt last fall and another 17 tons of asphalt this spring, which is almost 50 tons of asphalt and almost $7 million spent on the roads in Tucker just in a year. As a little bit of a sidebar, just in the last couple of days, we received a supplemental, called an LMIG grant, a supplemental pot of money from the Georgia Department of Transportation, because we, thanks to Ken, where is he in the back there, we had projects planned and programmed, scheduled, ready to go at a moment when GDOT needed to program some money. They called Tucker and said, hey, you got anything? Ken said, yeah, we're loaded up. So that money's going to go to improved signage, replacing some signs that are around, pavement marking, reflective pavement markers, a lot of really important but typically unnoticed safety things all throughout the city. So thanks, Ken, for all that you've done for us in that regard. In another first, we just completed a very successful manufacturing day. It was intended for the edification of our citizens, but also, again, for the wider world of the development community. It was executed by the city, but it was led in large part by a volunteer. Lori Wexel helped us kind of put that thing through, and she was a great help. Tucker is suddenly on the map of developers and commercial agents in a way that it has never been before. And the more we're on the radar of people like that, the more of them who have their eyes on Tucker, the more we're going to get solid proposals from trustworthy developers for the kind of development we most desire. And it's a lesson we've learned the hard way a few times, but it matters who you deal with. It matters what you know about how they do conduct themselves and how they partner with the cities where they work. It's far from a complete list. And keep in mind, the things I've been talking about are only part of the things that the city itself has done. And that's only a fraction of all that's been accomplished, because the festivals that you enjoy on Main Street, like Tucker Day tomorrow, Trunk or Treat, at Halloween, the Chili Cook-Off, the Taste of Tucker, 8 or 9 cruise-ins a year, those are all organized and presented by groups like the Old Town Tucker Merchants Association, the Tucker Civic Association, and the Main Street Tucker Authority. Tucker's Parks have led Tucker's Friends of Parks, which is both an umbrella organization and an individual organization at each park, have led cleanups, they've cleared and built trails for your enjoyment, they've developed community gardens, the Peach Pit, much more. Tucker Civic was instrumental. Did I see Lois Ritchie in here today? I don't know if she did. There she is right there. Lois, working with Tucker Civic, was instrumental in Tucker becoming a World Health Organization age-friendly community. Part of this idea of live your whole life, the length and the breadth of it. And Lois led that on behalf of the city. And I could go on about the Rotarians and the Optimists and the Lions and dozens of other community organizations that do work every day just among, oh, there's Lori, I didn't realize you were here, I'd have called you out. They work like this constantly, not for pay, not for the mayor to call them out at a State of the City meeting, but just because it's on their hearts to do something and to work for their community. And we really just can't say enough. So before we move on and talk about the future just for a minute, I want to acknowledge one other group. You might have noticed that all these projects I've talked about, the programs and the plans all revolve around the first 3 of those 4 elements that I use as a shorthand. Live, work, and play. A lot of people talk about live, work, and play. As a city, we can have a lot of direct influence, a lot of direct impact on those 3 areas. But what about the 4th? I use pray in that formula as a shorthand for our churches and our faith community. I think I can demonstrate their importance by asking you a simple question. What would a day in the life of Tucker be like if somehow the churches suddenly disappeared? If you just pulled them out of here? What would it look like? What would it look like if they weren't here to support networks or to open their doors on the coldest nights of the year to somebody who needs help? What if there was no daycare or preschool or Wednesday night dinners or choir concerts or Christmas programs? What if there were no pastors and no leadership to comfort the people, the friends and neighbors among us who suffered the loss of a spouse or a child or a job? Doesn't sound like a place any of us would want to live. The question becomes, what can we do? What should we do as a government to impact that important component of our community life? Frankly, it's best if government doesn't interfere in their work. As Thomas Jefferson argued when he coined the phrase about a wall of separation of church and state, you know, he was not talking about keeping the church out of government. He was talking specifically about keeping government out of the business of the church. So, that being said, the thing we can do, and I will do, at every opportunity is to let them know how important they are to us. Lift them up as uniquely valuable contributors to our corporate and to our individual lives. And we'll do everything we can to encourage and nurture their continued health and success. And thank you to those who are here today that are part of that indispensable work. So, to look forward just a little bit, misquote Annie, the future is only a day away, literally. If you come to our meeting Monday night, you're going to hear an exciting, innovative proposal to add Fitzgerald Field to our park system. We're creating a partnership with the Tucker Football League. This is an organization, if you don't know, they've been around well over 50 years. It may be more like 60 or 70. Provided recreation and sports training for generations of Tucker kids. So by joining forces and leveraging our combined resources, we're going to ensure the strength of that programming for at least another 50 years, while making available much needed additions to the fields that we have available in Tucker for sports of every kind, from baseball to softball, lacrosse to soccer. It's all going to be able to take place there, and we are excited about that. Also on Monday, that same meeting, we will take final action to approve adding North Lake Mall to the city of Tucker. It's important in several ways, but here's the main way, that this coming together affirms our founding philosophy, that there are certain things a smaller government that's closer to its businesses and citizens can do better than a bigger, more distant, more complex government. The new ownership of the mall has come to the same conclusion, which is why they asked to join into the success of Tucker, not to divorce themselves from DeKalb County, but to avail themselves of the service we can provide in a close partnership as they redevelop that important regional center, while retaining the advantages of large, world-class water, sewer, stormwater systems, and a full complement of world-class emergency services. This is the way we do business in Tucker, and we're excited to welcome them into the city and to work with them as they develop that important part of our city. The big impact, of course, will be the development that happens there, that actually occurs there, and the catalyst that it'll be for the whole area. It'll benefit Tucker and DeKalb County. You'll be hearing a lot more from the developers soon about those specifics, and I'm certain you're going to be excited about what's in store. Also coming soon, we're going to be implementing the plans that I talked about a little while ago. You're going to see our first trail project get underway that is part of an ultimate plan of 32 miles of trail network in the city of Tucker. You'll see the Lord Family Park come to life as a 28-acre gem right in the middle of the Smoke Rise community of Tucker. You'll see an expanded downtown Tucker begin and start to take shape as we complete what's been called Phase 2 of the Streetscape project down there. It consists of sidewalks and connectivity in a several block radius around Main Street, expanding the feel of downtown. And you'll see traffic and pedestrian improvements throughout the city as we implement these plans going forward. Finally, we'll be taking up a range of much more mundane, but no less important tasks, like our first charter commission. At 3 years in, we're supposed to review and make recommendations, this commission will review and make recommendations about how the city can operate more effectively in the future. We've just formed, the governor just signed our public finance authority that will enable us, sort of in the way a DDA does for commercial development, will enable the city to undertake public projects like consolidating city offices to make service delivery more efficient for your tax dollars and more convenient for you when you need to do business with the city. In conclusion, let me frame the state of our city in this way, our future as I see it. Sometimes your instincts lead you to do something on a bit of faith. Maybe you don't feel like you have all the answers. Maybe it's something nobody's ever done before, or certainly not you. But you go ahead anyway because your gut tells you it's the right thing to do. That's what we did together 3 years ago. That's who we are. It has paid off. Speaking for myself, I could never have dreamed of how much we'd accomplish in this short time. And it's going to keep getting better. We're going to continue to innovate, to find solutions to traditional problems like public safety, affordable housing, transportation and transit, leash laws. We're also going to innovate to find solutions to issues that didn't exist a decade ago, like Airbnb, rental scooters on the sidewalks, and gigantic LED billboards on the commercial corridors of our city. We're going to find ways with those. I believe cities are the new laboratories for democracy. They used to talk about the states being the laboratory for democracy. Each state would seek to solve similar problems in their own way and share those with the others, and sometimes those filtered their way up. I think that's what cities are doing today. The mayors that I know are doing fantastic work. The drive to become cities is that's what underlies it. We see a way to work together. We see a way to solve some of these problems in a way that hasn't been done before. The very creation of Tucker, the city of Tucker, and our form of government is an innovation. And here we are, 3 years in, with everything we need for success. We've got a great citizenry, a balanced, generous budget with no property tax, by the way, a solid plan for progress toward our agreed upon goals. It is an exciting time to be involved in charting the course for a city. And I'm glad we're in Tucker together.